The earlier years, Wright was not well accepted. He was in the vanguard of architecture. His ideas were not completely accepted right from the beginning. However, he became a world-renowned architect, and he is revered and honored today in no other way that you would ever compare with any other architect. This, in essence, is what has happened to the satellite industry, I believe, Pat. The satellite industry is not accepted universally at this time, but it will be, and it's getting there very fast now after 5 or more years.
And we are going to be doing our HOPE program this week from the German warehouse in Richland Center, Wisconsin, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, who became world-renowned and well-respected all over the world, and just as the home satellite industry will be.
You betcha.
Okay, we will return right after this message with our Space Track report. Stay tuned.
Luxor, the intelligent satellite system. The top-of-the-line complete satellite system by Luxor. Space-age technology wrapped in a compact, attractive package. The Luxor 9900 system knows where all the satellites are and all about stereo hi-fi sound. All you need to know is what show that you want to watch. Combine it with the premier quality aluminum mesh antennas, and you have an unbeatable package. The antennas that stay in shape and stay on target. 5-year warranty. UPS shippable. Durable baked-on acrylic low-luster finish. The perfect match for the 9900. Luxor, the intelligent satellite system.
Want to know more about satellite TV? Then go to the source for product reviews and how-tos. We're on the road and out in space, and sometimes in very cold places, with features and technical reports. It's all in satellite TV. That's only $19.95 for 12 big issues of STV magazine. Call now, 1-800-438-2020, and get this LCD calendar clock free with your subscription. That's 12 big issues of STV magazine and the clock for only $19.95. The number again is 1-800-438-2020. 1-800-438-2020. Call now.
From Richland Center, Wisconsin, the home area of Frank Lloyd Wright and the home of the German Warehouse Museum, which you see behind me, we now go to Washington, D.C., the home of our nation's capital and our trade association, Space.
Good evening from Washington, D.C. I'm Joe Boyle.
And I'm Robin Neidert.
Oh, hello, Robin.
Joe.
First off, 25 manufacturers so far plan to participate in the Space Fund. Space has obtained commitments from 25 manufacturers. As I mentioned, they plan to participate in the association's Super Fund. Dealers are urged to look for products that display the new Space Future Fund decals on products. Again, this helps guarantee the future of the satellite Earth station industry.
We have a number of battles to fight in '86, and this is how we plan to fund the campaign. Space cannot do it without your support.
That's right, Robin. We do urge you to support and to contact Space. We'll be flashing an address later on in the segment.
This weekend, Senator Gary Hart from Colorado announced that he will not seek re-election to the Senate. This clears the way for Congressman Tim Wirth to make a bid for Hart's Senate seat. Wirth is chairman of the House Telecommunications Subcommittee, which oversees the pending satellite Earth station legislation. That is, the 2-year moratorium on the scrambling of signals and the TOSIN legislation, which requires access to signals for home Earth station users. Wirth will also be holding congressional hearings this spring on that very important legislation. As you may recall, Wirth was instrumental in securing the attachment of the Viewing Rights Amendment to the Cable Act, which President Reagan signed into law in October of '84. An announcement from Wirth that he will seek Gary Hart's Senate seat is expected before January 21, when Congress reconvenes here in Washington. Between now and the 21st, representatives and senators will be canvassing their districts and their states for voter support. This is a perfect opportunity for you to meet with them about satellite television and to urge their support. 1986 is a re-election year for every single representative and for 1/3 of the Senate. Don't forget, they need your support.
That will be a very interesting contest in Colorado.
We think so, Joe. We think it'll be a very close contest, but Worth has got a lot of support nationwide, and of course, home satellite earth station industry could be very important to him.
And of course, Hart's own message is going to be interesting when we hear about his future plans. A meeting of the Legal and Legislative Committee will be held on January 9th in Las Vegas to coincide with the Consumer Electronics Show. Among important topics to be discussed at the meeting will be the scarcity of decoders and the problems involving scrambling and adverse advertising.
Also this month, the Dealer Board of Space will be meeting here in Washington to plan strategy for 1986. While in Washington, they will go to Capitol Hill and visit with their legislators, again, urging support for the satellite television legislation.
Which is why it's very important for dealers to contact us about any problems they are experiencing in their efforts to obtain decoders. We ask you that you send a letter to Space outlining all of these problems, and we have an address flashed on the screen right now. That's to Space, 300 North Washington Street, Suite 310, Alexandria, Virginia, 22314.
Last week, Space filed what is known as a Friend of the Court brief, asking the Court of Appeals to modify and clarify portions of a lower court ruling that held a number of bar owners liable for violation of the copyright law and the Communications Act because they used dish antennas to intercept football games of the NFL, of course, without the NFL's permission. The lower court rejected the bar owner's argument that reception of the football games was permitted under an exemption in the Copyright Act that specifically permits bar owners to use electronics equipment of a type that is commonly found in private homes. Although the court did accept evidence that there are over 1 million home satellite earth stations in use nationwide, the court still found that dish antennas could not be considered common. The lower court also held that one of the defendants was liable even though his bar was closed on Sunday and he did not display the football telecast to the public. Space has asked the Court of Appeals to modify this ruling with respect to that defendant. Space wants to make certain that this ruling is not precedent to find the viewing of satellite signals by private individuals in this private home any type of violation of any federal law. Space has also asked the court to limit the lower court's ruling to this specific incident so that it does not deter people in the future from arguing that satellite dishes have become common consumer electronics equipment. Clarification of the Copyright Act provision permitting the public use of common electronics equipment would help significantly to promote the growing acceptance of satellite earth station equipment as a part of the American scene here.
It almost seems surprising, Robin, that they don't consider this a consumer electronics product at this point.
We were very surprised by this ruling, Joe. Space did not participate in the initial suit, and we are gratified that the judge did acknowledge that there are over 1 million earth stations used nationwide, but it's very important that it be ruled that these are common consumer electronic products. So we hope to see that in the appeal that we filed.
So that we are mainly now taking a position just because of the important issue or the important
That's
impact
correct.
this ruling could have.
That's correct. If the ruling by the lower court had found that earth stations are a common consumer electronics equipment, we wouldn't be in this case on appeal, Joe.
Very interesting, Robin. In a letter published in the January 4th issue of Satellite TV Week, Senator Barry Goldwater, responding to a letter to the editor, notes that, first of all, you'll be interested to know that I have been in regular contact with program services which plan to scramble their signals, as well as with cable television companies regarding their scrambling plans. The senator said that he is seeking assurances that home earth station owners will be able to subscribe to programs at reasonable rates, and that there will be no monopoly over the marketing of such programming to the dish antenna audience. The senator added that he is seeking assurances also that an adequate number of descrambler boxes will be available on the shelves of dealers before any programmer begins full-time scrambling. Promises along these lines were given to me, the senator said, and you can be assured that I am constantly monitoring developments to see these pledges are kept. Regarding the scrambling of the broadcast networks, the senator said that this is the most difficult issue of all, and that the networks have a serious legal problem getting the proper license to operate a DBS business. The senator says, quote, I am exploring these and other questions with the networks, and I hope something can be worked out that will satisfy most dish owners.
I think that that's a very important letter, Joe. It does show Senator Goldwater's continuing support and continuing interest in the home satellite earth station industry.
And Robin, this gets back to another very important point that we continually emphasize over and over and over again, and that is that consumers have to become involved in this issue at a grassroots level.
Right.
We highly encourage your support, and especially for the support of our legislative activities. Under a new class of association membership, consumers can join for free. They are urged to make a voluntary contribution of $35. For this, they will get a monthly copy of our publication, SatVision.
Now, if a consumer wants to join, Joe, what do they have to do? Can they just write to Space?
Yes, they can contact us, Robin, and then we will be back in touch with them.
Terrific. Are there any kind of consumer applications appearing in any of the publications, the show guide, the programming guides?
Well, what we've done in a recent mailing, we've sent out these applications to all of our dealers so that any consumer who is interested in finding out how to become a member of Space is urged to contact his local dealer. The dealer will have these application forms available, and they should be there within the next week.
Terrific. Well, Joe, let's close this broadcast with an item that demonstrates just how important television is to the American public.
Robin, this is kind of cute. This is from a Q&A column in a recent copy of TV Guide. A reader wrote a question to the editor, basically asking, quote, if we get involved in a nuclear war, would the electromagnetic pulses from exploding bombs damage my videotapes?
Just goes to show, Joe, you have to set your priorities in this world. You have to know what's important in this world.
Well, there's no question that people today are buying videotapes, and they're buying and renting programs, and hopefully we're seeing more and more of them buying satellite dishes.
Anything that brings the consumer electronic explosion to the forefront has got to be good for this home satellite earth station industry. There's just no question about it.
That's right. Well, anyway, Robin, it was good talking to you again this evening.
Glad to be here, Joe.
We'll be back again next week for another segment of Space Showtime from Washington, D.C. This is Joe Boyle.
And Robin Neidert. See you next week.
Next week, Space Showtime will focus on the Consumer Electronics Show going on right now in Las Vegas. Producing that program, Space Showtime, will be Bob Behar, who is doing that for Space. We at Satellite Showtime produce the program on alternate weeks, so every other week we produce it, every other week Space produces the show. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can write to us at Box 48, Richland Center, Wisconsin, 53581. Or you can call us at 608-647-4246. And you can also feel free to contact Space by writing or calling. Coming up on Space Showtime, Tech Tips with Mike Gustafson. Stay tuned.
The Caltronics Trans 8, a great antenna. This transparent 8-foot antenna delivers an out-of-this-world picture to you. Not only does it perform, it looks great. A low-luster appeal with a baked acrylic thermoset black finish. The Trans 8 aims to get the best
takes place. Workmen know that because the machine
chaparral feed horns, recommended for all Caltronics antennas. The Trans 8, another quality antenna from the quality people at Caltronics.
With more than 100 channels available on your home satellite system, a good programming guide is an absolute necessity. On OnSat packs more viewing information in its 88-page weekly format than any other program guide, including daily primetime highlights in a handy grid format, plus complete listings in an easy-to-read rolling log. Daily sports listings by category. The largest alphabetical movie description of any satellite guide. A complete listing of satellite locations and each transponder, and much, much more. All of this can be yours for only $45 per year. That's less than $1 per week. We're so sure you'll like OnSat that we would like to send you a free sample copy. Pick up the telephone and call toll-free now for your free copy of OnSat. Call 1-800-438-2020. That's 1-800-438-2020.
It's cold right here in Richland Center, Wisconsin, but there's a man in California who seldom has to deal with weather like this. He's Mike Gustafson, and he is the West Coast editor and technical editor for STV and Satellite Retailer magazines. Here's Mike now with his Tech Tips segment.
Good evening, and welcome to Satellite Showtime Technical Session. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We do appreciate all the attendance and the cards and letters that you've been sending, and especially I appreciate the folks at the shows who come up and shake my hand and say hello and tell me how they appreciate it. And I do even appreciate the ones who say, hey, I like it, but I suggest you do this. So we're trying to include some of the suggestions. One of the letters that I've gotten that I especially like comes from a Ruth Volrath, who writes, and I'm not going to read the whole letter, but it just talks about the fact that she and I, our mutual friend, Pat Olson, have a special project which they are involved. And should that project be successful, it would make the audio portion of this weekly Satellite Showtime tapes available in a lending library for the blind and physically handicapped TVRO user. Now, we all tend to make the incorrect assumption that everybody who watches television, in fact, watches television. In fact, there's quite a few people out there who listen to television. And Ruth is one of those people who's blind and who listens to this program. And she essentially asks that we spend a little more time talking about things. Now, that's contrary to everybody I've talked to who say I go on too much about this, and I talk much too much, but we'll try to explain things, cut down the verbiage, but try to explain things just a little more audibly rather than just pointing at things. But anyway, Ruth is a ham radio operator, call sign KC0AS, and that warms a special spot in my heart because I'm also a ham radio operator, WB6PZX. So anyway, thank you, Ruth, for the letter, and we'll certainly try to do that. She actually wrote 2 letters. And the second one was pretty much like the first, but we do appreciate it. Anyway, so we'll try to explain more as we go with this sort of thing. So tonight we have a product review for you, and it's an antenna product review. It's the second product review we've done on antennas, the first one being the Lulai antenna. And that one we did as sort of an experiment. It seemed to work out pretty well, both for us and for the product review. This time we have an Orbitron 10-foot black mesh antenna. It is a 0.3 f/d focal point to diameter ratio, which means it's a deep dish, which essentially means that it curves an awful lot in this area. It's not a flat dish. So it's a 0.3 f/d. It utilizes a standard feed, whether it be a chaparral or one of the other kinds that are out there. The one modification to it is that you have to use the gold ring. Now, the gold ring is just a little bitty guy that snaps up in the front of the feeds, up in the very front, and actually causes this dish to work much, much better. So if you're going to be using an Orbitron dish, the 10-footer, 0.3, or any 0.3 for that matter, remember to modify that feed with the gold ring. And they're not really gold, they're anodized in a gold kind of color. Anyway, so this dish takes the gold ring. It's a 0.3 f/d, 10 foot in diameter. Now let's talk about a little bit about the construction of the antenna. It essentially is UPS shippable, comes in 3 packages as I remember. Everything's broken down, so the shipping is rather inexpensive. There are 3 hub plates. This is the hub plate. The 3 hub plates are bolted together with each of the ribs inserted. There's a center sandwiched plate that actually accepts these ribs to slide into. It's all bolted down and makes up the actual radial spokes of the wheel or antenna. Then we have rim sections that bolt on all the way around, completing the antenna. Now, the last section that you get to, where the last two sections come together, you get to play Macho Man once in a while on these things because they don't want to meet all the time, and they do have to meet. So you bring them together and you bolt it together, and that completes the rim and the antenna. But we haven't got the mesh in it yet, have we? Okay, that's the easy part, and that's what's nice about this particular antenna. You can put the mesh on with the reflector up on the mount. So this whole structure is slid on the mount, and I'll show you that in a minute, and then each section is slid in, and the whole antenna rotates. It just spins like a big wheel. And that's kind of neat. So you can stand down here and slide each mesh panel in, putting on
This is your introduction to Calltronics Incorporated.
azimuth bar to lock it down, but you normally have a electric drive sitting there. The one interesting point I like to make about this mount is that, of course, it's a polar mount. We all know that. But it has a very interesting readout device here for declination. And most of the time you'll find that an antenna has some sort of nut and bolt arrangement which actually tilts this antenna down in respect to the polar axis. Well, what Orbitron has come up with is they've actually welded a tube onto the back of their antenna crooked. Now that sounds funny, but
Because of that, Calltronics has increased their staff and the production side to 110 people, all dedicated to quality.
Quality, performance, and strength, and all at a highly competitive price. That's the all-new Trans 10 Mesh by Calltronics. Engineered for maximum durability and reflective surface.
too many of those around. Standard polar mount, nothing special, 3.5-inch OD type pipe. The performance of the antenna is quite good. Let me wander over to the performance charts now, and we'll talk a little bit about how it performed. Okay, just like I do my receivers, I have a performance chart that I created for STV Magazine. And by the way, the Orbitron product review will appear in, I believe it's the December STV Magazine. So let's look at this data sheet for a second. I'll explain some of the points. The average carrier noise ratio on Satcom 3R was in the 10 to 12 region. Antenna efficiency was quite good at 65%. Actually, I think it was 64%. That's right, 64% for this antenna. Antenna noise temperature was quite good at 31 to 45 degrees. G over T was 20 dB per degree K. Good G over T. Side lobe and off-axis gain was just excellent. Could not ask for better. We'll talk about the off-axis gain and side lobe performance a little bit later. The rest of the antenna, as far as instruction manuals and assembly, was rather straightforward. The manuals were good. They told you exactly how to do it. There's a few details in the manual that leaves you hanging, but if you're anywhere up on these sorts of things and just read it and use your common sense, it goes together very easily. Okay, the overall score for the antenna was a good at 78%, so it's a good performing overall antenna in that regard. Now I want to spend a moment and talk about antenna patterns and side lobes and 2-degree off-axis gain. That's sometimes something people don't understand. Now here we have the pattern for this antenna. And what is an antenna pattern? Well, essentially, in the X direction, in this direction, is angle, and in the up and down direction is power. In this case, it's sometimes. And the amount of energy as we move in angular distance away from the main beam, we drop in power. So when I talk about antenna gain 2 degrees off axis, what I really mean is you go 2 degrees over, then you go down and find out where you hit it. In this case, we hit around 24 dB. What that means is that a satellite sitting out here at 2 degrees off axis and transmitting into this antenna would have its energy reduced by 24 dB. That's excellent. That's excellent. You would have no problem with this dish operating in closer satellite environments. Also, you should note that the side lobes are very, very balanced, and that indicates that the dish is correctly round. You can say, well, all antennas are round, but it really is round. It's not warped or twisted. The feed point's where it ought to be. Everything is symmetrical, and therefore the side lobes are symmetrical. Now, what's this other pattern? Well, this other pattern in here is called the cross-pole pattern. And what we'll do is we rotate the feed 90 degrees, go into a null, rotate back out, and then come across in the same angular information. And you notice we get one hump into a null, another hump, and then back out again. Notice that the two humps in this case are symmetrical, the same height, and this indicates a very, very close tolerance antenna. The panels are all lined up as they would. The cross-polarization isolation, in other words, how much do we really reduce the unwanted polarization by? In this particular case, if we go all the way down, we see that we end up at 34 dB cross-pole isolation. Excellent, quite excellent on this antenna. Anyway, the point I wanted to make, besides talking about the Orbitron, was to try to familiarize you with just a little bit about this antenna pattern business you might see. Okay, I think that just about concludes this product review. And I would like very much to encourage you, if you're looking for a 10-foot antenna, the Orbitron 10-foot's good performer, and I think you'll be very happy with it. So until next time, thanks a lot. And if you have any cards or letters, the address to write to me on or for is Post Office Box 20700, San Jose, California 95160. Until next time, good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, coming to us from California. Texas is another big state, and coming up on Space Showtime, we'll take you from one side of the Lone Star State to the other. Stay tuned.
Satellite TV Preview is the best thing next to your satellite dish. With all those programs now at your fingertips, you won't want to miss a thing. Satellite Preview lists over 100 transponders in an easy-to-read weekly grid schedule. It has a daily list of movies, specials, and sports, plus a list of sports by event. Call and subscribe now for only $47 for 52 issues and save $31 off the newsstand price. Or call for a free sample copy. Dealers, we also have a special offer for you. Call 800-826-0735. Visa and MasterCard accepted. Satellite TV Preview, the best thing next to television.
Most people would agree. There's nothing quite like hands-on experience to learn a skill, and that's what some technical students in Texas learned recently as they grasped a rare opportunity. They learned to install a home satellite TV system that was furnished by Luxor North America. And not only did they install a system, they had a videotape made about it. And here it is.
TSTI Waco, an educational experience where learning meets practical application. As the only state-supported vocational technical school in Texas, TSTI's mission is to provide that vocational technical training for which there is great demand in the Lone Star State. TSTI Waco is well equipped with over 70 buildings on its 2,200-acre campus. With one of the nation's superior training centers for electronic service careers available to students, TSTI Waco is filling a vital need in the state's employment picture. These electronic students are preparing to install a satellite antenna system. The students are performing a site survey to determine if an antenna installed at this location will have an unobstructed view of all the satellites. Domestic communication satellites are located some 22,000 miles above the equator, and received signals are very weak, so a clear path is required. The direction of each satellite, called look angles, must be known. The students are taught the different methods of determining them. One method is the use of an aiming guide. The longitude, latitude, and magnetic variation is all that's needed, along with a few minor calculations and the look angles for a satellite. A more difficult approach requiring very accurate calculations with satellite data and formulas achieve the same result. In either case, a good inclinometer and compass will be needed to locate a site. Another consideration in a site survey is terrestrial interference, or just TI for short. These students are using one method of checking for TI. An alternate method using a portable TVRO system works equally well and also confirms the look angles calculated. Before digging the hole, better check for underground obstructions. Indiscriminate digging could damage underground utilities. Several factors will determine the size of the hole needed, factors such as the wind loading effect of the reflector and the local frost line. These students are doing it the old-fashioned hard way. Power equipment and pre-mixed concrete makes this task faster and easier. It's absolutely necessary for the pole to be plumb, as an unlevel pole would make it extremely difficult to align the antenna properly. And while these students are finishing up, let's take a look at the program for an audio-video communication technician. Electronic servicing is a prerequisite for either television services or radio communications electronics. In this open entry program, a student may enroll at any time. Here, students of the electronic art may learn the history of their craft from the very beginning to modern state-of-the-art. The theory of audio components is taught in the Audio Tutorial Lab. A series of self-paced modules and cassette tapes takes the student through the introduction to electronic components. This system provides a solid background in basic electronics, which is reinforced with lectures and demonstrations every day. While enrolled in electronic servicing, the student learns about radio theory and servicing, also an important part of an electronics service career. In this part of the program, basic but solid troubleshooting techniques and skills are taught as a student prepares for more sophisticated equipment. Qualified instructors monitor every phase of student work, ensuring that proper procedures are followed and learned. Following these basic troubleshooting techniques, the student progresses from automobile radios to stereo trainers. These stereo trainers allow the use of the troubleshooting skills on more complex circuits. Once the stereo trainers have been mastered, the student is now ready to progress to live work. Someone always has a broken piece of electronic equipment, and the faculty, staff, and student body at TSTI supply the lab with these live projects. Once electronic servicing has been completed, it's time to tackle advanced training. One of the attractive options available at this time is television servicing. The role of the television set in our lives makes it abundantly clear that there will always be great demand for those skilled at repairing them. Students that elect to enter this training will begin work on the theory and servicing of television receivers, which is known to the layman as the TV set. The program includes training in shop operations, practical electronics, troubleshooting, and television systems. At this advanced level, students will learn to operate the more sophisticated test equipment. A number of television trainers will be used in the TV labs to show the students the different types of circuitry in use by different manufacturers. There is often more than one approach to troubleshooting TV receivers. Students learn to be versatile and to utilize many types of test equipment. The color television receiver is the next step. In this phase of training, the student will learn the theory and servicing of the color portion of a TV signal. The additional test equipment required for color service is available as the student masters the skills necessary to work on color TV equipment. The mushrooming popularity of video cassette recorders creates an entire new arena of challenges and rewards for the skilled electronics technician. Since television receivers and VCRs are used together, the student must also master the VCR. Satellite antenna systems are also growing in popularity and are becoming a very important part of the television servicing industry. At TSTI, students are taught to install, align, and maintain satellite equipment. And TSTI Waco will continue to keep pace with the television industry, preparing its students to deliver technical service for existing equipment and the new developments that are sure to come. Nominal time for completion of TV servicing is 6 quarters, including the first 2 quarters in electronic servicing. Another option after completing the electronics servicing training is radio communications electronics. The radio communications field is full of opportunities for
This is your
for the General Radio Telephone License exam. Also available, the Certified Electronic Technician and National Association of Business and Educational Radio Technician Certification exam. These studies prepare the student for the appropriate industry exams and a career in the exciting fields of land mobile radio, avionics, and data communications. In this training, the student also learns
This is your introduction to Qualtronics Incorporated.
take you from big business to offshore oil rigs and to government agencies large and small. A career in servicing radio communications equipment can be molded to fit the needs and talents of the student. Systems ranging from the most simple to the most complex await your choice. Nominal time for completion of radio communications electronics is 4 quarters, which includes 2 quarters in electronics servicing. Nominal time for completion of both programs, radio communications and TV servicing, is 8 quarters. Upon completion of either or both of these programs,
This is your introduction to Qualtronics Incorporated.
a 10 1/2 foot 18 rib reflector by Luxor. The first step the students are performing is the declination adjustment on the back of the center hub. This is a very important adjustment, and if set incorrectly, the antenna will not track the entire satellite arc. Using a level and inclinometer, along with the offset angle found in the aiming guide, the declination is adjusted and locked down with the jam nuts. The ribs are installed to the center hub assembly with the hub blocked up to prevent any damage to the pivot bearings. Each zinc-plated polytrans vinyl-covered rib has an end cap installed to prevent moisture from entering the ribs, and this end is installed between the parabolic-shaped hub plate. After all the ribs are assembled, the rigid extruded aluminum outer rim is anchored to the ribs, forming a solid framework for the mesh pedals. Each acrylic-painted aluminum mesh pedal slides easily into the rib channels and is held firmly in place without the use of any type of clip. Trim is applied to the outer rim and the reflector is checked for trueness. The yoke is placed on the pole and the reflector raised and attached to the yoke. The linear actuator bars are attached using the holes specified in the instructions for this longitude. The feed assembly is then readied. The feed receives the reflected signal and on this motorized type selects the polarization by command from the receiver. A low noise block amplifier is mounted. After cables are connected and a cover installed, the entire assembly is mounted on the reflector. Special care is exercised to ensure that the feed is lined up at the proper focal point. The direct burial cable is laid using a soil spreader and cable tapper while another student installs the linear actuator. The motor wiring is attached and a small amount of gasket sealer is applied to the gasket and cover to prevent moisture from entering the unit. The Luxor actuator arm has a wiper to prevent moisture from entering the jack. On units without this feature, an expandable boot could be used and motor covers are available. Although a junction box is not needed on this system, the students are installing a weather safe. That way, they and other students that work with this system in the future can hook up equipment at the antenna site for testing and adjustment training. This box will also be handy for mounting other equipment such as line amplifiers and splitters, if incorporated. The receiver and actuator interface are hooked up, completing the installation. And there's the picture. A few adjustments to the elevation and azimuth, close the box, and we're ready to move the equipment inside. The wiring is dressed, a connector installed, and the wiring is connected using the Quick Connect connectors. Now we're ready to program the receiver. First, let's look at what the state-of-the-art receiver can do. This particular receiver literally has a mind of its own that comes with programmed knowledge of each individual satellite and each individual satellite transponder. Video and audio data are ready to deliver a perfect picture with the right sound. The only programming for the installer is the satellite positions from this location, as the receiver functions also as an antenna controller. 5 audio modes are available automatically with sound reproduction superior to the television set by the addition of loudspeakers hooked to the built-in controllable amps. The computer memory has capacity for 840 separate channel selections and 35 satellite locations. Inputs are available not only for C-band reception but also for KU-band, or a combination of both, with selection available from the remote control. The remote unit is color-coded and operation is as simple as operating a touch-tone telephone. Satellite names and number designators are clearly defined in red and in light blue, individual 1 through 24 channel selections. A TI filter is remotely selectable or can be programmed into the receiver's non-volatile memory for individual channels. The dark blue section performs simple fine-tune adjustments like volume, balance for stereo left and right, channel step and fine-tuning, and antenna west-east for minor adjustments that absolutely bring in the best picture possible. Along the bottom, the viewer can select different audio formats and narrow or wide band. The audio could be muted or even Dolby noise reduction selected. An odd-even parental lockout and video input selection is located below the on-off button. The remote control and the receiver front panel are both used in programming satellite positions. The western limit is selected first using the mode store buttons, and then each desired satellite position is identified, fine-tuned, and stored into memory, ready for instant recall. It is helpful in programming to use a program guide to identify the odd and even channels on each satellite. The final step is the eastern limit, and in no time, hundreds of audio and video channels are now available. With the insertion of a DC passive power divider, additional receivers may be added to this system, providing multiple channel selection from the other locations, independent of the master receiver. The slave receiver could also function as a non-remote, low-cost, standalone block receiver.
This system was donated by Luxor Corporation. TSTI TV servicing program is constantly working with industry to determine the needs of potential employees. It will be used to train the students at TSTI for years to come. TSTI was in great need of a latest state-of-the-art antenna system to train the students in the proper installation and repair of TVRO systems.
The instructions and operating manuals provide the students with pertinent information for installation, and TSTI provided the skills. A practical education offering skills that will be of great value in a competitive job market. That's TSTI Waco.
The home satellite system was furnished by Luxor North America, and we want to thank the Texas State Technical Institute in Waco, Texas, for sharing its experience with us. I had a wonderful opportunity to visit another part of Texas recently, and we'll show you that when Space Showtime continues.
In 1981, we set out to build a unique satellite TV magazine. For 5 years, we've covered all the important satellite news, and now bring you over 8,000 hours of satellite viewing each week with the easiest to read grid formats. If you own a dish, you need to know. And when you need to know, you need Channel Guide. Only $39 a year. Channel Guide, 800-654-3006. Call now for a free sample.
Welcome to the world of satellite TV opportunities, the marketing techniques magazine for satellite television that reviews the latest technology and introduces you to people you should know.
Satellite TV Opportunities is the marketing techniques magazine for satellite TV dealers. Our single purpose is to help dealers increase their sales and their profits through improved marketing techniques.
Call today for your subscription to success, 1-800-922-2812, Satellite TV Opportunities Magazine.
Joe Kelsch is with me now, and you may wonder why we are standing in front of this building. It's the German warehouse in Richland Center, very cold Richland Center, Wisconsin, and it was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Joe, can you tell the audience why, indeed, we are standing in front of this warehouse today?
Well, basically, Pat, this warehouse is one of the finest works of Wright dating back to the World War I era. It is different because it was the first general use of reinforced concrete construction. The outside walls do not support the building. They are strictly there to close it in. The building itself, all 4 floors, are supported by columns that are reinforced concrete, and they're very ornate. Another thing that you'd want to take and point out is the 10-foot high frieze around the top. Genuine, authentic Mayan architecture, and it's all ornate concrete, formed concrete, so you can imagine the pattern that had to be laid out for that. That is what sets it aside. And I just was told by the owner that it's 10 degrees cooler on the 4th floor because of that lack of insulation up there. It was designed as a cold storage warehouse. Therefore, now, as a warehouse museum, it's very fitting. The name is ideal.
Well, another reason we are in front of this, but not just to describe its wonderful architecture, is to tell people when it first came out, when this German warehouse was constructed, it was a new kind of architecture, and it took people some time to get used to it.
Decades.
And for that reason, also, the home satellite industry is just beginning to see the light of its potential, because people aren't quite used to the idea of home satellite TV yet, any more than they were used to the idea of a warehouse like this in Frank Lloyd Wright.
A good analogy. I like that. And it's going to be coming very fast now, much faster than Wright had to put up with in gaining recognition. We are recognized. We are a very vital force in America and the world.
So on from this type of architecture to another type of architecture. I had the wonderful chance recently to visit Pat Porter and his family, and he showed me something that's worth seeing, and it's in this week's Inside Out segment. Here he is.
I'm Pat Porter with this segment of Inside Out, and joining me is Pat Olson, anchor of Space Showtime. I've drugged Pat all over West Texas, and I wanted to show her this amphitheater that was built in Big Spring in the mid-30s. It was built under the auspices of WPA, Work Progress Administration. And it's quite an engineering feat because a great deal of it, Pat, was done by hand.
That's amazing. These are stones in here, Pat?
Yes, they're all stones, and people came and they did what they could. There were stonemasons and there were wheelbarrow operators. And you know, Pat, one of the things that I thought about while we were here, how different this is from satellite television, and then again how similar. You see, they've had amphitheaters since the time of the Greeks, and that's how people were entertained. And even though we're here today and there's no audience, all the seats are empty, you realize there's 100,000 people in the stands watching us right now.
That's really something.
And the reason it's something is because it's happened through the miracle of satellite communication.
Of which many people in the United States are very, very grateful.
That's true. There are people that are able to watch you and I here on location in Big Spring tonight that wouldn't drive and come be out here on a cold, wintry, blustery day to be in the audience watching us.
Not at all. I wonder how many people fill this in the summertime.
Golly, I think it'll hold about 10,000 people probably.
And you say the acoustics are good?
The acoustics are good, but the acoustics that we have right here with this little old microphone are infinitely better.
We can bring people together to this amphitheater without ever having an audience here per se.
That's right. Everybody can be at home cooking popcorn and eating popcorn and still enjoy visiting with us.
Yeah, and because of the acoustics of this amphitheater, you can project your voice very well.
Right, and talking about projecting, that's exactly what we're doing. We're projecting our images and our voices all over the United States and Canada.
And one thing we want to project is that how important it is to continue to write to your Congress people regarding bills in Congress, H.R. 1769, H.R. 1840, and S. 1618.
That's true, because if you don't write, then the next time we're talking, you'll be in the audience here with us on these cold stone seats.
That's right.
I'm Pat Porter, and this is Pat Olson, and this is this segment of Inside Out. See you next week.
There's plenty to see in Texas as there is in southwestern Wisconsin. In future weeks, we plan to show you more of our beautiful Badger State, and we'll also show you more of Texas when I was visiting Pat Porter, and Pat Porter will bring you Inside Out segments from Texas for the next few weeks. Next week, Space Showtime, however, will show you something else. It will show you the Consumer Electronics Show that will be going on this week in Las Vegas. Be sure not to miss Space Showtime next week for highlights of the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. This program was brought to you by corporate sponsors Luxor North America, STV and OnSat Magazines, and Calltronics Incorporated. Remember, you can see this show twice during the week, at 9 o'clock Eastern Tuesday nights and at noon Eastern on Wednesdays, and that's on SpaceNet 1, Channel 17. See you next week. Good night.